She's a former mayor. They're a former evangelical pastor with dissociative identity disorder. These two like to talk about the topics you're not supposed to talk about. They might cause you to perspire just a bit, but they'll definitely make you inspired. Let's talk religion and politics, and what spirituality and emotional well-being look like in a post-evangelical world. This is Paul and Ashley on Evangelicalish.
Yeah, it's Wednesday.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Okay, good. We have people joining. Normally we have folks starting to comment in the live chat before we go on, so it feels like there's company, has come over, and it's time for your evening chat. And then, okay, now Doug on the left is here.
Doug on the left.
Okay, it's official.
With us
it's an official-ish podcast.
What does he call it? He has
The
some
fascist
special
state
name.
of South Dakota, I think.
Fascist state of South Dakota.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, now your governor is in the cabinet, Doug, and shooting live streams of citizens being held without their constitutional rights being observed by ICE. So I don't know who your interim governor is or who will be coming next, but I suspect from Doug's opinion of the state, it'll be somebody leaning right, would be my guess.
So here we are. It's Wednesday. Gladys is here. Good to see Gladys's comment there in the chat. And welcome to everybody who may be listening later and not listening live, or watching later and not watching live. Yeah, this is we have become quite accustomed to our hangout time with one another on Wednesdays and with folks who gather for these shows. So it's kind of something I don't know, it's really cool. I look forward to it every week.
Yeah, for sure. Ex-governor LOL Larry Roden, says Doug. I'm not sure what that means. If the ex-governor is now the governor again? Something? I don't know.
A good question. I mean, I don't know. Well, before we go too deep down that rabbit hole, because there's a whole lot of other rabbit holes that we could tumble into tonight, maybe we should pull up and just talk about the last week.
Before I totally get out of that rabbit hole, though, the North Dakota's governor is also in Trump's cabinet, right? Burgum, isn't his name Burgum? He's like a billionaire. Of course, you have to be a billionaire to be in Trump's cabinet, right?
Exactly.
Doug Burgum, I think, is his name, isn't it?
No.
Anyway,
I have to be honest that I'm not that aware of the Dakotas and their governing presences and who made I other than Christine Oben seeing her do her thing. So
you got
me on that one.
All I know is they have 4 senators and probably 12. How many electoral votes would they have? 7, 8 between them, and I don't know, something. It was interesting because I saw a video today with somebody saying, if we're getting rid of DEI, the ultimate DEI program in America is the Electoral College. Yeah. There's nothing that tries to bring fairness more than the Electoral College. And so, yeah, if we're getting rid of DEI, let's get rid of the Electoral College. There you go.
Just straight
meritocracy,
right
baby.
there.
Meritocracy. And if Wyoming wants to have the same voting power as California, go get more people. Go get more people to move to Wyoming.
Did you hear about the AI tool that they're using to scrub documents in the IRS? There are words like inequities, because the government retaining dollars that is not the government's to keep is an inequity, and equity is a financial term, and
right.
that they're finding all the going through and making Swiss cheese out of these things for really ridiculous
my gosh
reasons. Turns out the IRS needs to be able to use some of these words, and yeah.
Well, those are kind of funny, but what I think is crazy, the law that Donald is using, wants to use the military to mass deport citizens, non-citizens, non-violent immigrants, is the same law we use to put American citizens of Japanese heritage into prison camps just right around the corner from where we live and down on our campgrounds. The Foreign Aliens Defense Act of 1798 or something like that. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt used that act to put American citizens into prison camps because they look Japanese, basically. And our American citizens, Japanese Americans, were given an hour to pack only what they could carry, and then were taken to prison camps far away from their homes. So, like, Japanese Americans in Fresno weren't interned in Fresno; they were taken to Arizona, far away from their home. So, and the crazy thing to me always, and we have a memorial right up near our house there where it happened. There's pictures of soldiers who are fighting for America in World War II that on leave had to visit their parents and family members in a prison camp.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. It's
horrific.
it's too much. Honestly, I do not land in this evening in this conversation in a good place. It is too much. And it probably the most desperate feeling is like I'm just really disturbed by like Elon Musk taking over the treasury. I'm
Yeah, it's
really, really
crazy.
disturbed by it. I'm
A
there,
completely unelected billionaire citizen is just, taking over the
and
mechanisms of government.
there's nothing to stop him directing his staff to like steal the data and go use it for something totally unrelated to administering federal government services. I don't know that that's happening, but there's nothing to stop it.
Right. There's
There's
no
nothing.
oversight.
There's nothing to stop it, and so
And with
um,
access to IRS information, he and his whomever he has working with him, they have all of our information, all of it.
correct, correct.
They have access to proprietary information of their competitors in business. And this
Yes,
is a person that does business with Vladimir Putin, with China, with countries all over the world. I mean, it's just beyond imagination, and you're
it
just
is
like, what are
beyond.
we
And
doing here?
saying this and hearing other people, like people are using communication channels to say this is crazy, this is not right, da, 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 and like, and it just feels like, and so what? I
Yeah.
mean, I think ultimately I do have trust and confidence. Well, I don't know if it's confidence. I do have trust in our legal system. I do have trust that there are really smart, capable, well-resourced attorneys who are armed, who are either filing or getting ready to file. Like I know the lawsuits are happening and will continue to happen. It's just, and I do think ultimately, like this activity will be ferreted out and contained, hopefully shut down. But how long will that take?
Yeah.
And what damage is done in the process is, and the fact that there are people in elected office who, under any other circumstance, would be losing their minds over this, and that they are giving it a pass, and that they're even like that they're placating this kind of, they're destroying, perhaps permanently, the public's trust in the governmental institutions that are theoretically and actually something we all jointly own. Like, this is all of our property. It is our public's trust, and it's just being totally, totally demolished. And that is outrageous to me.
And what's crazy is there have been all these conspiracy theories forever, the QAnoners, of there's a worldwide cabal that's running the government. George Soros, is running the government. Billionaires around the world are running the government. And now we literally have
Yes. And
a
it's your team.
billionaire running the government.
It's your team. Like you have installed and enacted all of this.
Out in the broad daylight,
It's
a
not the
billionaire is
Dems.
now running the government that he purchased for about $250 million, and nothing from the conspiracy theorists. It's crazy.
Now,
Okay, go ahead.
well, I wanted to comment. Doug on the left says in the chat the comments about the Supreme Court being conservative supermajority, a third installed by Trump. I will say this: I heard it's like, you know how you're listening for little threads of like, it's not something I can know just as an average resident. So like you're trying to like listen to experts and like figure out like who's reporting on what's going on. And I did hear an encouraging interview yesterday with I think it was a Princeton law school dean or professor who was basically saying the Supreme Court decision last year that gave the president such broad sweeping immunity and authority if doing things, whatever, like in the line of duty, whatever, like there's immunity for this person. This legal scholar was saying that's kind of like like that was a shorthand way for a lot of people to be like, oh my God, we can't believe the court did this. And while a lot of legal scholars still would say like, yeah, that was the wrong decision. Her point was it's actually more narrow than what was commonly understood last year.
Okay.
And that there is there were several other decisions this person was pointing to that she was like, no, I actually think the Supreme Court is going to uphold like basic constitutional stuff. So anyway, I was like, oh, like a kind of, you hold on to that stuff.
I hope so. You have this judge in Florida that has been so blatantly pro-Trump.
Yes, exactly.
That it's scary that a judge could be so devoted to a person. But I did read a little bit. I was like, I didn't know how to process it in here. But it was an article saying, our best hope is, believe it or not, Amy Coney Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh, that they have been the two most pushing back on the crazy conservative majority, and particularly Coney Barrett, that she has been pretty outspoken in keeping the Supreme Court independent and law bound. And, that was really encouraging to hear that there are still judges on the Supreme Court, unlike Clarence Thomas, that still believe law is important in legal matters.
Yeah. It's like, when you see these wisps of, like a person upholding and adhering to, I'm going to say, there's like constitutional norms and standards. Like it's a person who you're thinking like, yeah, they could be persuaded because like this whole crazy town that's happening, a lot of people who you thought would be standing up aren't. And when you find people like, oh no, they're still down to and committed to 3 equal branches of government, constitutional norms, you're just like, oh, thank you, God. And it's just little things that you're holding on to, right? Like, and like trying to braid them together into a narrative of like, we're going to get through this somehow.
What's scary is, all those boxes in the bathroom in Mar-a-Lago were there for a reason. And a lot of it has to be leverage on people because, now I can't think of his name. The senator from Louisiana, who's a doctor,
Cassidy,
that was asking the real hard questions of Bobby. I want to say Bobby Nutball, but Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And Kennedy didn't even know the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. They kept asking him about Medicaid, which it appears that Doge, whatever that is, wants to totally start sucking the money out of for tax cuts for the rich. And they would ask Kennedy about Medicaid, and he would start talking about Medicare. He didn't know the difference between the two, and this is going to be the human health. But and then Cassidy was asking all about the vaccines and things, and he was like, this has been proven. And then what does he do?
Yeah, he's like,
He
well, if the science is there, and oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, he voted him through. So
Yeah,
all that tells me is somebody has this guy, and they're just saying, hey, if you don't do what we tell you to do, there are consequences. And the consequences may be, we know what you did on this junket here or this thing here. And it just seems like everybody's pretty leveraged.
I feel like now at this point, like, I'm not terribly worried about sort of unqualified dum-dums, like it's kind of like a clown, the sort of clown effect, like, that's the least of my concern now. Now it is like full-fledged coup. We like had this thing completely spun out of control. Where are the guardrails? How quickly are they going to catch? Like it's I am well past worrying about vaccine myths and disinformation. Well past it, because I basically do still think that there are enough ways in which there's enough free floating information and ways to push back on like factual misinformation. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's not great, but I'm not as worried about. I'm worried about this Elon Musk stuff.
Well, I'm worried about that too. But if Kennedy is put in the head of the HHS, it's not just vaccine misinformation. He can do things to make it hard for people to get vaccines. He can take away sort of the national governmental vaccine court, which would mean maybe pharmaceutical companies quit making the vaccines, or the doctors quit administering them because now they are liable. Because a vaccine is basically like a social contract. We know that some people are going to be harmed by the vaccine in rare cases. And we determine as a society, it's better for us to eradicate the disease and take care of the people that are the small minority harmed by the vaccine, than to not have the vaccine at all and just let the disease run rampant. And if we and so we have a special court to handle those situations. And if that goes away, then pharmaceutical companies and doctors.
I'm just telling you, I've well moved past worrying about that one.
Yeah,
I just have.
I haven't. I think polio sounds really bad.
No, I know, but I feel like I think there's a growing pushback on that public sentiment anyway. I could be totally wrong. I get it, but I'm just telling you, like, Elon Musk having all the treasury information and it's stopping him. No stopping, like no sign of like, oh no, they can just do whatever they want. Like, that's okay. And the fact, like, I think it's this thing that he is extra governmental. He's not confirmed by that. So again, at least a cabinet secretary. I mean, they're still going to be in the, Congress controls the budget, and you got to go through there's still some sense of check on regular crazy cabinet posts. Still, they're in the government. Elon Musk is outside of the government, running things, like grabbing
with no
things.
oversight. Is Donald Trump his oversight?
Jesus,
and when he's out this week saying U.S. aid is criminal and has to be shut down, I do not trust him. I do not believe a word he says. So,
because who else would want USAID to go away? Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
Like China. I mean,
Viktor Orban is very congratulatory about it going away. Yeah. So dictators around the world are rejoicing with Elon.
It's like people in the political governmental space, they ultimately have pressure points, and it is public sentiment And it is, checks and balances that may take time, but eventually they're there. Elon Musk is outside of that. He does not, I mean, I think personally he probably does have pressure points, but they are not the pressure points that the American people have to exert on their government. They're not.
Well, when you're
He is loyal
nearly,
to himself. He is the king of the world. Like, he is the global king.
he's the richest man in the
Now
world.
running, richest man in the world,
Yeah.
now running our Democratic Republic.
And by the way, was at one time an illegal immigrant in the United States. Just like to throw that in.
And
He ca-
whose businesses and fortunes have been subsidized by taxpayers for
Yes.
decades
Yes. Yeah.
and not obligated to any governmental authority at all,
Yeah.
except for Donald Trump.
I don't know if we want to keep going on this street or get into our, but
don't
the last
know.
thing I want to say is the reason I was mentioning Trump using this horrible law that we used to put Japanese Americans into prison camps during World War II is what a bad look, and how much do we know this Donald Trump just has absolute zero care of if what he's doing looks absolutely anti-human. But one of the things I say, the famous saying is those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. And one of the things you have to do with history, and I love history so much, is you have to look at our history and say, okay, we can never let that happen again. When we do something horrible, we have to say that was horrible. It's why not teaching about the full effects of slavery and Jim Crow and racism is horrible, because you set yourself up to do the same things again. So we should be teaching the internment of Japanese people from World War II and saying, hey, children, you need to know how horrible this was. And we swear as a society that we will never do this again, because today we are doing it again, the same thing. And I work with young people every week as part of my job. And we were talking about this with a group of high schoolers the other day. And they're telling me about immigration, and I'm thinking of it in terms of, the work we're doing. And then all of a sudden I just kind of stop and look. I'm the only white person in the room. And these children, 18-year-old children of brown skin are looking at me. And I'm like, hey, this really does impact you guys. And they're just like, yeah. And they're like, what do you think's going to happen? And I have no good answer for that except to say, guys, I don't know. Our country has lost its way. So we're just going to have to stand and hold on to each other and trust mom and dad and trust cousin and aunt and uncle, and just take care of each other in the middle of it all. And it's really all I could offer, because what do you do when a president is, what did Steve Bannon say? Flood everything with shit.
Yeah.
Flood the zone with shit. It's do so many crazy things that people can't possibly stand up against them all. And when a president is doing so many, I would say, illicitly illegal things, how do you fight back against them all? And it's just really a pretty crazy time. And that just showed me how much this really impacts real human beings.
So, it's a really low, dark time when you agree with something Steve Bannon says and you take comfort in something Steve Bannon says. Yet that happened to me this last week when he is naming, hey, Elon Musk is the problem here. He's the one to watch. He's consolidating power at too rapid of a rate. He's going to be, the downfall. I don't know all what he said. I just heard it reported. But I was just like, oh my God, Steve Bannon is saying this. Like, hello. That's not a good day.
Yeah, if we're depending on Steve Bannon to keep things in check, we are in deep poo-poo. That's for sure.
We have really got ourselves spun up. It's like, I don't know what else to do.
And by the way, I can't help but every once in a while go, how are eggs and gas prices doing? Like, everybody voted for eggs and gas prices because Biden couldn't control inflation, right? Yet eggs and
Yeah,
gas
I
prices are
know.
up, and Trump is
No, I
saying
know.
they could go even higher.
And by
Although,
the way, did you see that China's 15% tariff is on the American oil and gas sector? So our American-made oil and gas products that a bunch of people make a bunch of money off of selling to China just got taxed.
another beautiful social media video today was of somebody portraying Justin Trudeau on the phone, apparently with Donald Trump, and he's like, "This guy's nuts. Okay, what do you need? You need us to do something at the border?" And he's like, "What was that deal we made with Biden? 2.2 million? Okay, or 220, I think it was. Okay, I got 220 for you, Donald. That'll work. Good, good. How many soldiers did we put down there? Okay, I'll give you this number of soldiers." And then he hangs up. He's like, "What a moron," And same with Mexico. They're like, "Hey, yeah, we'll do what we promised Biden we would do. Will that have you pull off the tariffs?" And it's like, "Yeah, sure." So it's a crazy, crazy world.
Oh my
And
God.
like she's the president of Mexico has some serious training and education in her background, so she's not a
Oh
fool.
yeah. No, she is a smart, sharp person. Um,
Oh, I just spilled, but I'm okay. I'm okay.
did coffee go on the keyboard? That's the big question.
No, it did not, and it
Oh,
was
thank
just
goodness.
tea, and I had just a little smidge left.
Okay. Well, Alex is joining us from Brisbane, Australia, and I wonder what the view from there is. Like, people in Australia are probably like, "Thank God we are an ocean away from." Anyway, but all the conversation about how Biden and his international relations team like really rebuilt um partnership with Australia. Like they knew what they were doing, hit it hard, rebuilt these relationships, this long standing, it was Australia and I can't remember all the countries, and like it really moved the needle on whatever geopolitical positioning, advancing the US, and you know, now those people are like, probably, good God, what has happened to us?
And the saber rattling, I'm going to force you to do what we want you to do, which is clearly Trump's foreign policy methods always. Those can work short term if you're the biggest, baddest bully on the block. But other countries are going to say, "Okay, yeah, you're big enough to force us to do that." That's why I don't think necessarily, and Alex could tell us differently, that other countries are like, "Yeah, this is good that this happened." Look at United States, how ignorant, because they know how much the United States impacts other countries around the world and their economies and such. Um, but those countries then become pretty frugal friends who say, "Okay, next time you need something from us, don't think it's going to come easily." And
Yeah.
there will be a day when you need something, and so it's just and to me, it's the idea that we're just going to be this big bully against people, against countries. We're going to go to Panama and say, "Hey, give us our canal back." And I mean, it's just, if that's what America is, if that's what makes America great, then I personally don't think it's a great country, because it just doesn't feel like what I believe America really is all about. Evan says the foreign policy of Commander Bone Spurs. Yeah, and
So we
and
were,
today and today, Donald was going to take Gaza over, and make it
yeah,
into the
yesterday and then reverse that today. Yeah.
Riviera.
Okay,
Yeah,
so we were going to talk about what
demons.
demonic demonic
Maybe we are
exorcisms.
talking
It
about
seems right.
demons.
It seems right. It feels exactly like what we're talking about. Um, so we got a half hour left. I think we should probably jump back into the video and kind
Let's
of
do
wrap that
it.
up because I don't think we want to push it over. But I do want to say this about last week's episode. If you haven't listened to it yet, kind of my takeaways. I was looking back at my notes because I sit here every week and I make my little notes on our show. Yeah, demonic government, says Stephanie. Anyway, what stood out to me was how kind this bishop is. Did you notice his whole thing is like people are suffering and we're here to help. And that so resonated with me, and I just saw the tenderness and the care that he's bringing forward. And like I think over my decades of charismatic evangelicalism / Christianity stuff, every time we were exposed to demonic exorcism kinds of things, don't you feel like it was a little bit of this power struggle, this, come out thou foul spirit? And there was something about the approach that was centering the minister in this like cosmic standoff, like duke out with a demon. And that was the opposite of what I feel we were hearing from the bishop last week. And I really, really appreciated that. And it made me think, like, look, electromagnetic fields. I mean, who knows what these things are? Well, at the very least, you could just be like, hey, there's energy currents that get whacked out, and then like certain weird things start to happen. Probably, I don't know, physicists could explain it. So who knows what is really the deal with the spiritual part of this? But my God, what a decent, kind, caring, and committed person he is to trying to help other people. And I think that's pretty badass.
And charges not a dime for it, and doesn't
Doesn't charge
do
a dime, won't
reality
personally,
shows.
that's
Yeah,
right, won't personally benefit or exploit, other people. Like that was really impressive.
yeah.
It made me want to listen to more.
Okay,
So
well, let's do it.
I think we should listen to
And
more.
listening to more is also, we'll start a little bit overlap from where we were last week. He's talking about how when somebody calls and says, we need help, he sends out a team to start to research what happens. And so that's where we join Bishop Long from the old Catholic Church, not the Roman Catholic Church, and how he handles the demonic.
Sorry, but that's not going to happen. So I dispatched a team out there, and first of all, whatever team that's been there that are seasoned, and these people, and what makes me mad about these ideas that people have about paranormal investigators is that not everybody thinks everything's a demon, and that not everybody trucks around, the graveyards, and these people put a lot of money into this equipment, and not only that, they never charge. They go to people's homes whom they don't know. They don't owe these people anything. And they could be travel 8 to 10 hours away from their home. They leave their family.
I want to make sure it's almost a little bit confusing there. He's talking about, the ghost chasers on TV are, kind of maybe a little bit of charlatans. And then he's back to, but my team, they're
Yeah.
going out there just for goodness, just like you were saying, and they're not taking money. They're buying expensive equipment, and they're doing it for good.
Investigate, and it takes hours and hours and hours just to review all the evidence. First of all, you have to investigate,
And
then
they're
you have
not
to turn around.
recording for a TV show, I assume.
And I would absolutely, if anybody went to someone's home and did it for a television show or our YouTube channel, that would be done. I would have no association with them, because because in the 33 exorcisms that I performed, we do record them for legal reasons, but they will never, under any circumstances, ever be showed. I was doing a paranormal conference. I was teaching about demonology, and right in the middle of the conference, a network had contacted me, and so I put it on speakerphone. There's a room full of people. And Bishop Long, yes,
I'm gonna
Bishop
jump
Long,
just
we
a
have
little
show.
bit
It's
forward.
green EVPs that are quite chilling. And then you have what's called a disembodied voice. A disembodied voice is one in which you can actually hear it. So it's recorded, but you can actually hear. So all this, let's say if there's religious artifacts on the wall, you need to document this. Has it been blessed? And then does anything occur to them, or did anything occur to them when in fact the investigation occurred? So there is a form of provocation. Provocation is not beating your chest and saying, come on, demon, I dare you to do something. Because if a demon is there, a demon will looking at you say, oh, I will. I'll do something when you're lonely and you're depressed and your wife or husband leaves you and you lose your job. That's when I'll do something. So you just given an invitation. So when you begin to provoke, you begin to pray. And so they pray, and that's provocation. There's going to be a response. And so we determine what the response is, how violent is it, and then we go from there. And then they review all the evidence, submit it to me, and I make the decision on whether or not we need to go. Now, that's what the minor rite of exorcism. That's when a demonic has infested itself within the home. That's a different story than the solemn rite of exorcism. The solemn rite, you're dealing with someone who is possessed, and that person has gone through extreme physical, mental, spiritual trauma to get to the point of possession. And that's a whole different ballpark altogether.
And I know we're on a podcast and we're in this genre and we're trying to get attention in the world. So I want to be careful of going into sort of exorcism porn with all. I don't know. I like I say, I don't want to make a spectacle out of this, but I guess I'm just interested to know. So when somebody is possessed, what does it look like?
Sure.
How do you know they're possessed, and what makes you say, okay, this is time for a solemn exorcism?
Okay, so with the so you have, let's see, it starts with demonic infestation. So demonic has infested itself within the home. So religious objects are desecrated. You'll hear bangings, smelling of sulfur or rotten flesh. So animals usually are very terrified. You feel a sense of dread. And then it begins with demonic oppression and demonic obsession. So demonic oppression.
Let me ask a broader question. So what is happening there then? Is there literally a fallen angel?
Yes.
Or a group of fallen angels that have found a mark where they can abide and they're making their life miserable, or what exactly is the point of that?
There could have been a pre-existing haunting. So let's say, for example, someone does something in their home. They granted the invitation to whatever it might have been, whether it be seances, a Ouija board, whatever it might have been, to grant the invitation. So you could move into a home that has already demonically infested situation. So, but 99% of the time, when that's not the case, it's because someone has invited it in some manner. Whether or not they go out and paranormal investigate, is there anybody here? Can you do something? Can you push me? That's invitation. Then you have attachment, because the demonic has the invitation that it needs to attach. So that's usually 99% of the time. There always has to be some form of invitation.
Okay.
Or pre-existing haunting. So that's we go in, and demonic obsession and demonic oppression is when when it gives oppression, it begins to attack the person's will. So it begins to bite them and scratch them and pinch them, pulling them out of the bed. It's basically causing such sleep deprivation that the body is becoming compromised. So the will is becoming compromised. And then at the same time, you have demonic obsession, where it begins to interact with them on an intellectual level. So they hear it. It mimics schizophrenia. So they hear these voices, don't let the priest in, the priest is going to harm you, etc., whatever it might be. And that the whole point of that is to destroy the intellect and the will of the person. Because once you do that, then the person can no longer fight. When that has happened, then you have what's called possession. Now, there's perfect possession and transient possession. Transient possession is when the demonic will enter the body and leave at will. A very famous case, a movie, The Exorcism of Emily Rose, is actually based on a real story. Her name was Anneliese Michel, and she was German. She suffered from transient possession. She always remained in the stage of oppression that never left. So, and the reason being because the demonic wants to keep the intellect and will eradicated so it can enter and leave whenever it wants. Perfect possession is when the person has no relief of the possessed, of the demonic. There's no relief. So when all the psychological, yep.
Let me catch you for 1 second, just for anybody that's listening. I mean, how afraid should people be? I just want to give reassurance to anybody who might be listening to this and it's creating fear for them.
Sure.
how much should we be afraid that we have a misstep? We played with a Ouija board back in the day. We read a Harry Potter, whatever, from the Satanic Panic, whatever, played the wrong rock music record or something, that a demon has been able to find a spot in us. How afraid should people be of that? And I'm sorry to interrupt your story, but
No, it's a fair question. So I want to share something with you. Let's see.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's 22,000 and 3. That's in my emails for my ministry for people who are needing an exorcism or claiming they need an exorcism. In 25 years, I performed 33.
Okay.
So this is really, truly very, very rare. It does occur, but it is not as prevalent as so many people think. So I think people need to. The reason is I teach this is because I understand about being skeptical. I'm skeptical. If I believed every single person who told me that they had a demon in their home, if I had a nickel for every time someone, I'd be a millionaire. So many people have
700,000 followers on TikTok. There's obviously some interest.
Yeah, I bet it's just, yeah. I mean, well, when I'm a cast member on a show called Eli Roth Presents Legion of Exorcists. So it's on HBO Max and Travel Channel. And boy, when we did that, because we were sharing our stories about our cases that we worked, I mean, I was slammed with people. Oh, I had the same situation happen to me. This is why I rely on paranormal investigators to debunk. Our goal is to debunk. That's what we want to do. And it's only when, after we exhausted every single possible thing, then we say, okay, now we got to look at the theological aspects. Because I tell them debunk. That's what I want you to do. Because I'm a skeptic, but at the same time, I can't deny what I've seen. And so for me, it's not a matter of I think possession exists. It is a matter I know. Because here's why I tell people, number one, I receive no stipend or paycheck for being clergy. We've established that. I don't charge for this ministry. I pay for it out of my own pocket. As a matter of fact, for 15 years, I actually put $15,000 on my credit card, helping people for free. And it was just recently that I've had a few friends say, hey, Lord, step up and help you. Thank God. Otherwise, I would have had to stop. So I don't charge. I don't do this for fame, because you do things for fame to make money. I receive no stipend. Yeah. If I did not know that possession exists, I would do something else with my time. Because
let me jump in. I'm sorry, because our time is short, and I know you have a hard stop. So we, suggest talk to your clergy, talk to a therapist if you're feeling that, and kind of start there, and then if it goes on, talk to Bishop Long. But so now get us back to if your investigators have done their investigation, there's something going on. Okay. We're seeing I say demons harassing a family and maybe some possession of a person. How do you get it out of there? I don't know if that's the right language, and I apologize if that's what.
Expel it. So, for example, if demonic has infested itself in the home and it's scaring the family, it's attacking the people. So you go in, and once all the evidence is there, you hear the EVPs. It's clearly something malevolent is there. I would go in and perform what's called the minor rite of exorcism. So basically, I start in one particular room. I bless the whole entire ground. And I finish with the room that is the most active. So the family usually is not there, because I don't want anyone to get harmed, because it has happened before. So I'm in there. Activity usually sometimes can be violent, can be very aggressive. And then there's an expulsion. And the way you know it is everything
violent, like they knock you down, they fight with you, they throw things at what's violent.
I've had a crucifix thrown at me. As a matter of fact, this was I'll never forget this. So this guy asked me to come into his home and help him. And sure, no problem. Beautiful home. It was a 2-story home. And we were upstairs. So we were walking upstairs, and he said, I'm just feeling overwhelmed right now. He had a beautiful mahogany couch. So you have the living room here. And then over here, you had kind of like a small dining room. We were up there. As soon as I was beginning the litany of saints upstairs, it was like I heard one of the loudest noises. I thought the house was going to fall in, because I had no idea. It's like someone had just knocked the house down. We ran down the stairs. This massive mahogany, big, huge couch had been flown from where it was in the living room and completely crashed into his table, the dining table, and destroyed the hole in the wall. I mean, I have never seen that type of reaction in my life.
Is
Never.
that just like they're pissed that you're there and that's their response, or
That's
they're
provocation, because once you begin provoking, you're going to get a response. And that was the most violent response I have ever seen in my life. There was no way. First of all, there's no one down there. But secondly, there's no way even 2 men, 3, you would have to have a team of 20 men to be able to even lift that and throw it.
Wait, I can't hear you. Are you talking?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm interested on a scale of 10 being that is absolutely true. I believe it beyond a shadow of doubt, and 1 being that's total bullshit. Where are you on the scale of believing that story of that couch, or what do you think about it?
Okay, so I mean, I grew up around a lot of conversation about like spiritual things, so I have like a comfort level. Like, yeah, maybe it happened. Like I assume it probably does. This guy strikes me as being honest, and I don't have any reason to believe that he's spinning a tale here. Um, it doesn't really freak me out, I guess. If I really thought about it, it probably would, but I'm kind of just like, whatever. Because I also in our strand of Christianity, like we grew up with like such a reverence for like no the presence of God, the peace of God, the love of God that's in you, Holy Spirit. Like these demons are nothing compared to the power and presence of God. So like don't get freaked out about it. Do you know what I mean? Like we heard all those stories of like the missionary who, woke up in the middle of the night and there was like a demon standing over him and says like, "Oh, it's just you," and rolled over and went back to sleep. Like, right. A lot of our conversation was around like the devil is so puny and weak. It's funny that he thinks he can get to us. We're the great big, powerful Jesus heroes. Right. So like, that's kind of how I think about it. But I imagine if you're like in the moment and that really happens, that would freak me out in the moment.
Yeah, I definitely think there are things that happen that we can't explain,
Yeah,
and
I think
yeah,
so.
and they've got to have some genesis of some sort like this. So, all right, let's jump back in. So, what does
How much longer,
blessing
by
look
the way?
like to make it so they have to leave? What's that?
How much longer is the
I
interview?
don't, however much that is. So I'm not totally sure, but yeah, probably more
Okay.
than the time that we have left.
Okay.
We even can't come back.
Yeah, well, you have to certainly consecrate the ground, and you bless the home, and then we have mass and the home, and of course every person is then blessed. And so it's a form of just basically just consecrating the ground and the area to expel. So that's what we do with a minor rite of exorcism. The demon has infested. On the solemn rite, I have someone who is medically trained with me because I'm not. So I don't know if the person is going into a heart attack or stroke during an exorcism, because that's possible, because the body has already gone through so much trauma. So we have to make sure we're monitoring the vitals. Usually it's very calm in the beginning. And as I begin the litany of saints, that is when the activity will increase. Sometimes it can get quite violent. The temperature usually drops dramatically. This is why there's a term called retrocognition. And retrocognition is the ability to know your sins. So this is why we always have the sacrament of reconciliation, everybody, prior to participating in the exorcism, because we take that away from the demonic, because the demonic will use that to embarrass whoever is in the room to stop the rite. And also prognostication to be able to tell the future, something of this nature.
So they'll start listing out sins of the person promoting the exorcism and they know what they're talking about.
They absolutely do. Yeah, 100%. This retrocognition is something that's really important. That's why everybody, no matter who is going to be there, even the person who is the assistant, the medical assistant, everyone has to have the sacrament of reconciliation, because we have to absolve, to remove that from, because I've seen cases where some pretty bad things were divulged and it just destroyed the entire rite. So the rite is a repetitive prayer. There are 2 things that I command from the demon. There's no such thing as having a conversation in an exorcism. It doesn't exist. 2 things. What is your name? And what is the hour of departure? That's it. Because actually in the rite, you have to silence the voice. And that, because otherwise it lies, and it will throw the voice. And what I mean by that is very disorienting. So if you've ever gone to YouTube and there's an 8D, put on the headsets and like 8D surround sound. And so it will throw the voice where you'll hear it over here and back here and back, primarily to disorient you. And so in the rite, you have to silence the voice and command two things from it.
Name and serial
Name the
number.
hour of departure.
Yeah. Okay,
Well,
so and so what happens? The exorcism is successful. What happens? Do you see apparitions leave? Do they?
No.
What happens?
There is a definite change in the atmosphere. It's very light. When you walk into a person that is possessed, it is heavy. It feels heavy. The presence is it is so like a 50-pound weight on your chest. You feel it. It is intense. And then at the expulsion stage, that completely lifts. I mean, and the solemn rite it's repetitive. It's a repetitive prayer. That's what it is. There's no conversation. I don't care what it says. I don't care what it says. It is repetitive because the intellect and will of the exorcist and the intellect and will of the demonic are at battle. One will win, one will lose.
Mm.
And that's why we always have an assistant. So because it's exhausting. I mean, this could last quite some time. So it's not many times it's not a one and done situation. Sometimes it has to be repetitive. But you keep going and you keep pushing and you keep repeating the prayer over and over until eventually you weaken it. And then there's the expulsion stage. The entire room, everything, the oppression lifts. Everybody can feel it. And the person receives the Blessed Sacrament. I bless the person. There is no violent reaction to this. And then we usually immediately administer some type of first aid and get them to the hospital so they can get a lot of liquids into the body. Because at that point in time, regurgitation does happen. So the movie The Exorcist, that happens quite often. So they can dehydrate very easily. So we got to get them liquids.
All right, let's stop it there.
Yeah, I was just going to say exactly the right place to stop. I'm curious, do you, the point about like, in coming in contact with someone he would call demon possessed, they just feel like they have a 50-pound weight on them and you just feel the heaviness of that. Have you ever experienced that where you just like encounter someone trying to have a conversation, whatever, and you just feel heaviness?
I definitely have been in spaces where I'm like, ooh, there's a weird vibe here. Something feels a little off here. In fact, I was looking at a website for a project I'm working on, and even in that, I was a little bit like, something feels weird here.
What was it?
It was kind of a religious spirit kind of thing. It was, I don't want to put it out there in public, but I could tell you later. But it was, a place I was thinking about doing business with, and then I was like,
right.
I don't know. And then I kind of got it confirmed by somebody else that that may not be the best place. So yeah, I've kind of had that. Have you had that experience with a person?
Just trying to think. I mean, of all of the thousands and thousands of people, that I've been sat with, had meetings with, like I don't think I have. And that it seems like you would like if this is like a thing that you would. I'm 52 years old. Why have I never come across somebody that was like, oh man, I felt the heaviness of that demon? I don't know.
The one real experience that I can share, and that is I was preaching at another church as a guest speaker. I felt something inside of me highlighting this one person out, this woman. Just as as you're preaching, you're kind of focusing around and seeing faces that look like they're in agreement and enjoying what you're saying. So they encourage you to, keep doing your thing. And somehow I kept being drawn to this one person. And so at the end, it kind of was our tradition to ask people to come forward if they wanted prayer, kind of either as a blessing or a release from some sort of oppression or healing, something like that. And so this woman came forward, and I was kind of working down the line praying for people, and I came to her, and I seriously reached I closed my eyes and reached out my hand. And when I reached out my hand, then because I usually touch somebody on the shoulder or something, I reached out, and then she wasn't there. And I opened my eyes, and she had hit the floor before my hand had gotten there. And I don't think that's because I'm so super powerful or anything. And her eyes were open, and there was I could see the whites of her eyes. Her eyes were rolling back in her head. And there were things that made me believe that she was expressing something demonic. And so I just
remember you telling me about that. Wasn't she writhing in a certain way and all that?
Yeah, she was doing a lot of strange things. And so, what I did was I asked some of their prayer team people that they had, can you guys take her back to another room? Because I didn't, mostly I didn't want her to be embarrassed. I didn't want something to happen that would embarrass her. And so, and, I did see her after the service, and it seemed like the prayer had been very helpful to her. So that's the, probably the most I can say. There have been a few other experiences, but that one was really stark, I thought.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I've encountered any number of difficult personalities and people who are upset, all of that. But I never felt that it was a otherworldly dark presence. Even people who may, have wanted to present themselves as being a part of some kind of occultic stuff. I've never felt a dark presence like that in a person.
Yeah. I remember all of our, I could kind of facetiously call them demon chasers, our prayer teams at our church that would, pray against the occult and things like that. And some would tell me, in our town, we have kind of our arts district, our queer district, which is called the Tower District. And people would tell me ooh, every time I go down there, I just feel the heaviness of the demonic and the occult. And I would be like,
Right.
every time I go down there, I think it's just super, super cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you've shared that a couple times. And I think that's just because there are storefronts that have, various paraphernalia for drug and spiritual things that people from our stream of Christianity are not comfortable with. And so it just sends the alarm bells. There must be the demonic here, and the homosexuality.
Of course.
The gay district.
Of course.
Well, okay. So, and Peggy in the chat is talking about having something move from one house to another, and having this thing run down the stairs and out the front door, never heard from again, and looking at the stairs and there was nothing there, but they could hear the footsteps. That's pretty wild.
I remember the old Eddie. If you remember the old Eddie Murphy joke where he was talking about the movie Poltergeist and how white people, the ghost is in the house and they're doing all these things to try to get rid of it. He said, black man goes in a house and oh, look how beautiful this house is. And then hears a voice say, get out. And oh, too bad we can't stay. Gotta go. We're out of here. So I always thought that was hilarious. We could finish on a high note and just revel in our joy of watching Chappell Roan on the Grammys this week and how cool she was. And she gave her victory speech of being named, what was she, Newcomer of the Year? Which is funny because she's been playing her music for 10 years. But in her acceptance speech. She said, I always promised if I ever got up here, I would say, hey, record labels, you need to start taking care of your people and give them salaries and give them health care and things. And I just thought that was super cool.
Yeah. Well, that, and then what I loved was, first of all, just her makeup, her performance, like the staging, the beauty of the show. Like it is just a sight, right? And so it's like I can't take my eyes off her. I'm thinking of the people who have the skill and the creativity to paint. Like her face and body is like a work of art, and like so it's just so beautiful. And then this song there's just something about it that is about like freedom and creativity and like wanting to stay connected to mom. And I know what you're going to say. Like, I love the heart of it. But my favorite part was when she turns to the audience and all of these like top singers and the most talented, pop music, this and that, they're all singing the song together and experiencing like that kind of freedom and excitement. I thought that was the crescendo moment for me.
Did you mention Pink? It was Pink Pony Club that she was singing. I don't know if you mentioned that.
I didn't. I don't think I did mention it, but I mean, there's just something about that song that you're just like, I'm telling you, it is a freedom, creativity anthem. I love it.
Yeah. So that was
Speaking
fun.
of another high note, so on the other end of the musical spectrum, our daughter, the aspiring opera singer, had a show-stopping performance at her graduate school where she's in New Jersey, and they did an opera from the year 1651 called La Callisto. And she was kind of the big character actor in the show, and she did a fantastic job, hit the highest note in the show, a high C. And it was a really cool show, and it was cool. I went back to, I mean, it was like a quick trip, but I flew back. And by the way, flying this last week was not a fun thing. Like seeing all of these plane crashes, my God. And then being like, yeah, let's fly across the country and back in 2 days. That sounds like a good idea. It was terrifying. Anyway, made it back there. And this show is like, I mean, imagine performing art that was like from like hundreds of years ago and still producing the same feelings, the same songs, telling the same story, like showcasing and stewarding the beauty of that expression. I mean, it was powerful.
And fairly risque.
It was all about, honestly, it was like sex from top to bottom. And this is 1651. And I was learning about like this. I'm not exactly sure what it was originally produced for, but it could have been for like kind of the like town and gown crowd of the village where this came about. And it was probably done at like a dinner party or a feast. And they were, the guests were feasting and getting drunk. And this would have been kind of in the background. And so, like, it's a little bit of like, hey, no one's really paying attention, so let's just like sex it up. But it was this very salacious tale of God's, a female goddess wanting to, have a sexual relationship with a young boy, and then a male god who fell in love with this human woman, but disguised himself as a woman to entrap her. And the earthly woman like wanted the relationship with who she thought was. I mean, it was just like, holy crap. This was, we were like all up in it, and it's 1651, right? Like, how are we still,
and amazing
like,
that we're still having to use art to try to push back on regressive thinking around all of that.
I know, but it was great. And our daughter was just so
She
powerful
was
and wonderful.
fantastic.
And yeah.
Not that I know what fantastic
Yay.
is, but people who know
Oh,
what fantastic is said she was fantastic.
like objective people said she was fantastic. Also, what is fantastic is whatever your kids are doing that they love. Like, that's
Yes.
fantastic. So we
Yes.
definitely got to experience that. Anyway,
For sure.
it was a fun weekend, and man, oh man, it was a crazy time.
All right. Well, another show in the books, and glad we got to share some pain of what's going on in the world, and then the joy of listening to a little bit about exorcism, and then sharing some of the beauty of the week.
It's been a little bit of I have to say, I think I feel a little bit better from our first half hour rant and vent. So thank you for indulging and like having a place where we're all just kind of. I swore, I was like, I am not going into Trump 2 in this, like, I'm always exasperated. I cannot hyperventilate for another 4 years. I can't do it. I just can't do it. And then that is entirely what I've been feeling this last week. So anyway, I
Yeah.
felt a little better. So thanks for that. What is our plan for next week though? Like we're getting off the demon exorcism thing. We've done that for 2 weeks. We are gonna
Do we
put that one away.
do we have the focus on the family? I should know this, but
I think it's a week from Friday that we're doing that. So I don't know if we're going to
okay.
also do something on Wednesday night. We'll have to. And this is a good reason why you should subscribe at evangelicalish.com. You can get emails to know what's going on. Obviously, once we find out, we'll email people and tell them because we clearly don't know. But sign up for the email list. Make sure you're in the loop. And while you're there, consider supporting what we're doing here because where else can you go on a Wednesday? Where you're going to go from Elon Musk to demon
Chapel Roan.
exorcisms to Chapel Roan to 1651, operas. Like that's, I can think of no other place besides right here. So
I think that's very well said. I think you are 100% incorrect, 100% correct in that for sure. All right.
Well, thanks for the encouragement, everybody. You guys stay connected with one another, and we will see you next week.
All right. Love you all.